I'm going to show you how to do lace trim in corners. So this is the non-stretch lace, and this just gives you an idea of what it's going to look like when it's finished. The most important part about doing our lace trims and connecting corners is that we try to find a match point for the scallop. It's not always easy. You can see this scallop is irregular, so not every scallop is identical. So we just do the best we can to try to match up those scallop points. I have some smaller stretch laces here that I did, and you can see the variety of the different kinds of scallops and the points we made. So the first step is we have our fabric with a corner. So generally this is done on like a slip. So first we lay down the length of the lace going along the edge. And you can attach the lace with just scotch tape, and you can sew right through it and it pulls up real easy. So then we're going to lay a length going across. And you can see how I have some overhang. And I've done that mainly because it's easier to sew, and it's important for us to, again, try to find an attractive match point on the outside corner and the inside corner. So once I've set that up, I'm going to chalk a line. I've used a dark chalk here so you can see it, but you have to be careful with chalk on lace. A lot of times it doesn't want to come out. So what we would do is that we would zigzag down to this chalk point at the inside corner, and then we would pivot there and continue sewing the lace. After we've sewn the lace, we want to come back and we want to trim away the excess fabric. And then using a very small zigzag. So we want the zigzag to be small and close, not so close that it's going to cause puckering. So once we have that, we're going to come to the top side and we're going to cut away the lace. You just want to make sure that you are very careful here and try to cut as evenly as possible. So first we do the top side. So we've done the top side of the lace, and I removed that corner, and now we will come to the back side, and I'll cut that off. So this is a look. So again, we just want to do the best we can for matching up the lace down at the corner on the outside corner and up at the top. And then with the tape, like I said, it comes off really easy, and it really does work well. So now we have some V-necks where I've applied different lace inside a corner. So how to do this? So you have your V, and in the center of the V I mark down with chalk. And you come down and you lay your lace. So we want to make sure that we've got a little extra overlay, and we want to pin that down, and then we can chalk that down the center. And we want to have just enough little overlap so we can overlap the edge here. And then we're going to come back to the other side and we're going to do the same thing. So again, we would line it up on the edge of the fabric, and then we're going to trim the back side after we have stitched that lace to the fabric. And then the final point is that we're going to zigzag up the center of the laces. Again, you want to try to match as attractively as you can the lace at the point and at the center. This takes a little bit of practice, but it's really well worth the effort. This way you can do necklines and nightgowns. So you can see that I trimmed away. And when you're sewing on lace for a nightgown, it's best to use the stretch lace. Now I want to show you how to construct our panties. So here we have the front right side, we have the back right side, and we have the crotch right side. And what we do is that we sandwich these pieces together. So I've got my back right side, and I'm going to place my front right side, matching that up. So we'll match it up to the center, and I like to just a little pin to hold that. And then I'm going to come back to the wrong side of the back, and I'm going to take the right side of the crotch lining. So now I have 3 layers. So I have the wrong side of the crotch piece, the wrong side of the back, and the wrong side of the front. So we have the right sides touching. So I put that pin in the center, and then I come over to the outside of all 3 layers, and I place another pin. And we have to be really careful when we're sewing this curve, otherwise it will become distorted, and we don't want it to ripple. We want it to be a really soft, smooth curve. So we've got our 3 layers, and you can see that there's kind of a little lip going on. So we just gently tug, and we want to bring all 3 of those layers together. So we just want to ease those together. So now we're just going to stitch 1/4 of an inch. And then when we open it up, our piece will move forward like this. So we've got both of our wrong sides and our right side of our crotch. So you can see here, we just want to trim it down to about 1/8 of an inch. Again, we're going to be sewing that seam with a tiny zigzag. So once we have that stitched, I went ahead and I sewed in my elastic on the leg so you could see this. So with both sides open, we'll sew in the elastic and then we sew up the side seam. And before I sew up the side seam, I come back and I do a row of top stitching, which is a little zigzag on the elastic trim. Now, depending on how you've put on the elastic, you might use a bigger zigzag if you were to fold over. So once we get to the side seam, I like to do a little secure stitch. So we're just going to go up the length of the lace trim or the elastic, and I've pushed the elastic towards the back, and I just securely do a few back stitches, come up to the edge and do a few more back stitches, and that keeps the lace or the elastic nice and flat. So you can see that the crotch piece has gotten caught up in the elastic of the leg. So we don't need to stitch that down. You can stitch it down if you want to use a little row of zigzag, but I just find it creates less bulk, which I think is more attractive in some of the finer fabrics. So now you can either hand-based or machine-based or pin this little crotch lining piece to the edge of the panty as you're stitching in your lace, elastic, or trim. So when we stitch in the elastic, we're going to start at one end and we're going to follow the whole entire length of the leg. And we don't stretch the fabric, we only stretch the elastic. So what I like to do, so we know that the elastic is going to be 3 or 4 inches approximately, depending on how much stretch. If you're using stretch lace trim, we don't deduct that much generally. But I like to mark the center with a pin, and then I will place it in the center of the panty. So we're just going to do a zigzag on the edge. So if you have lace trim or if you want to use an elastic, we're just going to zigzag the edge of the elastic along the edge of the panty, and again, we're not stretching the fabric. So before we sew up the other leg seam, we're going to attach our elastic at the waist. It's just easier to do the whole length of the waist. Than it is trying to sew in a circle. So once you have your elastic attached to your waist or your stretch lace trim, then we're going to match up the side of the leg and the side of the waist, and then we'll finish that off. And then again, you want to do that securing stitch. Make sure that the elastic or the lace trim the edge of it is pushed towards the back of the panty.